Welcome back to Evolve. Today we have the honor of speaking with Anna from English Like a Native, who is of course, YouTuber, but also a fluency and confidence coach in English. And we're going to be decoding British culture and asking Anna, what really is British culture and how do we adapt as a language learner to the UK? So Anna, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to Evolve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
So, yeah, before we, I guess, dive into really understanding Brits, because for me, even as a Brit, I feel like we're quite complex and peculiar people. But could you give anyone watching this just a brief overview of your background?
Yes. So I started in performing arts, as some of us do, and fell in love with language production in general, and had a real thing for Shakespeare and really intense language. And I also found accents quite interesting as an actress. I wanted to be able to deeply understand accents and why they're different and how we can produce the different sounds. And that kind of took me on a journey into coaching and teaching, first of all, accent and pronunciation. Then I moved into music as well. So I was a singing teacher for a while. But naturally, the kind of elocution pronunciation work started my journey into English as a second language. So many of my students were non-native speakers of English, and they didn't just want to know about pronunciation. They also started asking me questions about the language and structures and phrases and idiomatic language. And so I started evolving, as
I like that.
we all
Thank you.
should. I started evolving into an English language teacher, and I just followed the opportunities. Really, whatever people said they wanted, I thought, well, yeah, I can figure that out and impart that onto you. And before I know it, I've got a huge YouTube channel, and then a podcast, and then a business and courses and a team, and it just all just happened. I still do a little bit of the performance art stuff, but mostly I'm just focused now on education. I think providing value for other people in whatever sense that is, whether it's entertaining or educating or supporting, then that gives you a good route in life.
No, I love it. And I think it's so nice that all of this was kind of born out of, well, partially this kind of curiosity for accents and how that just grew over time because
Yeah.
I know so many people across the world now study English, whether that's American English or they learn very like textbook standard British English. And I know, having worked in the language school space in the UK, that a lot of people come very confident that they've watched movies their whole lives or, passed ace the English exams. And then they come and they arrive at Heathrow Airport and someone says, "All right, gays, where you going then?" And they have no clue what language is that person speaking. So accent specifically in the UK is so layered, so complex. Could you give
Yeah.
us just why is that? How come that if you learn some other languages, you kind of got the standard, maybe a couple regional accents, but in the UK, it's just I've never seen anything like it in any other country I've been to. Why is that?
So the history of the UK, being an island, of course, and having been invaded so many times, that's the primary reason. From the very, very well, from hundreds of years ago, when the language started to develop from the different invasions of this country, it also brought with it different accents and different ways of pronouncing the words that were being introduced. And the accents have continued to change and pull apart because of different influences. So if you go to the west side of the UK, for example, if you study the accents, you'll notice that there starts to be a similarity in, say, a Scouse, which is a Liverpool accent, a Northern Irish accent and a Welsh accent. And you're like, hang on a minute. These are three very different places that are separated in some cases by ocean. So how are they the same? And it's because of the movement of people between those places being very unique to that area. And so they started to share certain elements of their way of speaking. And that also came from Welsh language and the Irish language as well. So all influenced. And all around the UK, whether you're up in Scotland or down on the south coast, there's been movement of people between those different places coming from different countries. And we're just like a melting pot. And we just take on these different languages, different accents, and it just informs and evolves into, I think it's like 40 plus different accents that we have in the UK. And it continues to evolve. I find it fascinating. You'll sometimes hear, you'll hear people with a very distinct, very standard regional accent, but then they'll have one sound. For example, there's the lady who does my Manchester accent video, a lady called Cora, and she has a very typical Mancunian accent, but she's got one vowel that is very Yorkshire, and that's because her father, I think it was her father, is a Yorkshireman, and so there's one vowel that's more like oh, like from the goat sound, and you're like, hang on a minute. Is she Manchester or is she Yorkshire? What? And it's the same across the UK. We're all influenced because we're a small island, but there's so much movement going on. People are getting influenced all uniquely by a different set of sounds. And so we all have our own unique accent, which makes it difficult to teach accents because in every single one of my accent videos, you'll see hundreds of comments, people saying, hang on a minute, I'm from this place and I don't sound like that. And it's like, yeah, because, we are all different.
Yeah, and I mean, before we go deeper into this, could you just share what are some of your favorite accents from the UK? I didn't even know there was 40. That's
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
My favorites. So I love the Welsh accent, and I mean, the Welsh, Scottish general, anyone in Scotland has my ear. I love it. But also the Irish accent. I think that's quite typical across the UK. People love an Irish accent. I like all of them. I can't really say there's an accent that I don't like. I think the stronger they are and the more distinct and unique they are, the more I like them. I can't do a Welsh accent, not even in the slightest. No, I mean, a bit of Gavin and Stacey. Yeah, I can't do it. When I go, I listen and I mimic as much as I can, but I can't. The lilt, it's beautiful.
And I mean, the thing is, as a teacher, then this is what it is, such a beautiful thing when you look at it from that perspective and enjoying the differences. But I can find here as a teacher, this must be incredibly challenging then when someone I want to learn to live in the UK and speak to everyone, and then you go 30 minutes up the road and they speak in a different way and they use a different different vocab. So how do you navigate that as a teacher, being able to get someone confident to kind of survive in this country?
So the important thing is exposure. If you're not exposed to a certain set of sounds and certain words or phrases, then of course it's going to be alien to you. I had a team member message me yesterday with a clip of an American guy speaking, and he said, I've listened to this 37 times and I cannot understand what he's saying. It's driving me crazy. Could you listen and tell me? And this guy is not a native English speaker, but his English is fantastic. And so I had a listen, and he was beating himself up at the fact that he couldn't understand this American accent. And I had to say to him, look, I can't understand him either. And I played it about 7 times, but that's because I've not been exposed to that particular accent. It was a very, very strong regional American accent. I had no idea what it was. But also the speakers, it's not just about accent. In fact, most of the time, I'd say it's more about production. if you mumble, if you don't articulate well, regardless of your accent, you can have, the Queen's English, BBC, heightened RP. But if you're not articulating, then no one's going to understand you. And so when it comes to helping my students to navigate the landscape of regional accents, I always encourage them to vary their sources. So don't just listen to the accents you can understand, the stuff that's easy to comprehend. You have to expose yourself to as many different accents and speakers as possible, so that, of course, we're living in the age of the internet. Everything's available. So listen to different podcasts, watch different YouTubers, TV programs. There are more and more regional accents available online now and on our screens. So it's getting easier. There are also archives of different accents and dialects that are available to us as well, like the IDEA, the International Dialect. I can't remember what it stands for, but IDEA, if you look up IDEA for accents, then there's a whole archive available for free that you can just enjoy listening to all the different sounds, and it's transcribed as well. So that's really useful.
Oh, great. I'm sure we'll get that and we'll be able to put it in the description or flash it up on the screen. But I know it gets even deeper in the UK. But then just a slight side note is that I was speaking to my Korean friend recently and just said to him, hi, how's it going? I'll be in Korea recently. And he said to me, oh, Hakeem, the British accent is so popular now in
Really?
Korea. And we're Koreans are getting into chav makeup. And I thought, well, this is the power of globalization now, that people are finding out about all these different subcultures. But it did also make me think about in England, let's say as an outside learner, for, learning British English, that identity and accent and class are all kind of linked in a way as well that
Yeah.
maybe some other countries don't have. And is that something you've ever had to break down to people learning that, okay, certain people, like you might meet someone who says, oh, how do you do? And then you might meet the next person on the street. Oh, mate, both of those are English. Both of those are, very, very, I guess, depending on which circles you're in, typical phrases to hear. But how do you explain that to someone who hasn't grown up with that exposure?
Yeah, so it's difficult because you have to be careful not to continue to push the kind of class divide. Accent, particularly the accent that I work with, which is the modern RP accent. And the reason, this isn't my native born with, not that you're born with an accent, but I didn't have this accent. I didn't speak this way initially. I used to have more of a Lancashire, slightly Mancunian accent, having grown up in Manchester. And I decided, because I felt that my way of speaking would hold me back professionally, and so I decided to evolve or change the way I speak in order to give me more opportunity, which is this expectation that, because of RP being developed by the upper classes in the past, by the educated upper class, they developed the RP accent in order to distinguish between the well-educated upper class and the working class. And it continues to be seen as the posh accent then. And, depending on who you're talking to, there are certain members of my family that when they speak to me, they go, oh, you're so posh, you talk like that. You think you're so posh. And I'm like, it's just the way I speak now, and it's done me wonders in my life. It's helped me with my career. It's helped with my confidence. But I don't want to push that divide. I don't want to say that you have to speak like this in order to achieve, because I know of very high flyers, people who are CFOs, CEOs in the financial world, in top banks, who have really strong Bristolian accents and Birmingham accents. And that's lovely to hear. And I want to hear more of that. We shouldn't feel that because someone has an accent, they can't achieve in the workplace. They can't be well educated because they have a regional accent. I think that's nonsense. But what is important is, as I said before, clarity. You can have a strong accent but still be very clear. And in the professional world, you need to be able to clearly get your point across. There was a really funny video, well, funny, frustrating as well, in the House of Commons, I think it was. There was a Scottish MP. Are you familiar with this clip I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
He gets up and puts something to the House, and then the person he's addressing says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get a word of that. Could you say that again, please?" And so he repeats it. I think he's got like a Glaswegian accent, which is quite strong, but still, it was deeply frustrating to watch. And he had to repeat himself a number of times. And eventually, the guy he was talking to said, "I can't understand you. I'm sorry." So there is an importance of communication within the professional world, and clarity, I think, trumps everything. So being very clear, and that might mean softening your regional accent a little in order to have a general clarity. But what we do teach is the difference between like formal language and informal language. So, there is a basic standard. I think you would have this in any language of words and phrases that are acceptable in the workplace and words and phrases that are not acceptable in the workplace. And so we always talk about whether a word or phrase is formal or informal. And if something is not very fun and commonly used, but not really appropriate for the workplace, then I'd say very clearly, this is a great phrase. You'll hear it all the time, but it's not appropriate in a professional environment. So be very careful with it.
Well, no, beautifully said. And I think it's hidden me because it's quite relatable in that the way I'm speaking now is so far away from the way I would have spoken when I was a kid.
Really?
And I adapted it more so just for being abroad, because when I worked at the UN before for around 4 years in Asia. So there, if I spoke in the way that the locals around me in Kent speak, no one would probably understand me, and they're using an even more formal language in the UN that I'd ever, as a native English speaker, I had to adapt to their excellencies and distinguished delegates. And I remember showing some of my younger cousins who knew me just from Thanet, where I'm from, and they were saying, but they heard me speak, but you don't speak like that. What are you doing there? It's a strange thing, especially when you're young, to come to terms with this. But it is so embedded in our society that I feel like if you're not aware of it, you are missing out on potentially something that could impact you a lot in the future or not. So it's very, very deep. Do you have something to say on that?
Yeah, so I was just going to talk about identity. So, we grow up with a certain way of speaking, and that is how we identify. This is who we are, and it's important to us. And we're also human beings, and naturally, our nature is to fit in with the tribe, whichever tribe that is. And because we travel so much, we all move away from our hometowns, from our friends that we grew up with, our families, or many of us do move away. So then we find a new tribe, and the nature in us to protect us is to fit in with the tribe that we are now with. And if that's you moving from, one town where they've got one particular way of speaking to somewhere completely different. So from the north down to the south, for example, you naturally want to fit in with that tribe. And so what you'll see and hear are people's accents adjusting. And so I always notice when people emigrate to America or to Australia, the twang is so different to the British twang. And you'll hear that start to come in when they're speaking. So they'll come home and just start like talking a bit like that. And you're like, oh, you're American now. Oh, do I sound American? Yeah, a little bit. Or with Australian as well. And it's because you want to fit in with the people you're with. Sometimes, though, Some people feel so passionate about who they are and where they're from that you'll notice their accents get stronger when they're away from their home. I know a girl from Leeds, and when she came to study with us down in London, her accent got really, really strong. She was really broad. It's like, I am who I am, and I'm proud of it, and I'm not going to even adjust a tiny bit. This is me. Uh, and that's fantastic as well. But I think people coming to this country or moving to any other country who maybe feel embarrassed about the way they speak should try and hold on to the fact that who you are is unique, and we all are unique, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. And having an accent is okay, and the focus should always be on clarity. So accent softening was a term that used to be used quite a lot. And people would use phrases like, get rid of your accent, completely stamp out your accent. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to be clear and be able to communicate so you feel natural, feel like yourself, and you can fit in with the tribe. But don't try to stamp out your own way of speaking altogether, because it's like erasing your history, you know?
It's so tough, isn't it? Because there's it's you can look at it purely from a linguistic perspective, but then you're not acknowledging the identity, the class, the professional benefits and whatnot from all of this. A more light-hearted example would be just in the US. A lot of people actually really like the British accent. So
Right.
where in Asia, I'm thinking, okay, I need to speak really clearly. Like you said, clarity is key here. So I'm going to really focus on speaking a bit slower and very clearly. When I go to America, I know that they're native English speakers, and they have a bit of a, like they got something for the English accent. So there, excuse me, sir, could I please have, yes, a bottle of water? And y'all from England? Y'all from London? And that's normally a really positive example of that. So I don't speak like that in my normal day-to-day life. And if I did here, where I'm from, people would look at me very strangely. But it is the power of an accent is definitely like it's huge.
Yeah.
But there's the famous clip of the butter versus butter. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it's not just linguistic as well. There is a class undertone in a lot of this that I think just we don't need to go. This isn't a political podcast, but
Yeah.
awareness I think is just key to tread with sensitivity. Okay, but you mentioned. And yeah, even just for me though, I would get I've got family in the Midlands, and I would say glass,
Mhm.
and they would say glass.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, oh, glass, Your Highness, if I asked for a glass of water. And and that's not that far. The
Yeah.
Midlands, where they live up in Peterborough, isn't that far, but the accent can change so quickly in the UK.
Yeah. It's a strange stigma, and it is frustrating. I find that I slip back into a little of my northern sounds when I'm with other northerners. I tend to say I slip on the sound, so I tend to do oh. So I'll say like, oh
Uh,
look, there's a duck, rather than there's a duck.
Jumper.
Jumper, yeah.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere because I wasn't fully,
Mm.
standard British English with the RP, and people who like spoke it natively would say, "Oh, where are you from? I detect an accent. You're from the north." I'm like, "Oh, how could you tell? I thought I was doing a perfect accent. What gave it away?" And then I'd go to the north, and I'm like, "Oh, you're posh. You're from the south." I'm like, "No, I'm not from the south. I'm from Manchester." And it is frustrating, the stigma that exists and the jip that you get. I speak the way I speak, and people assume that means that I'm extremely successful, very wealthy, highly educated, and that's not true. I grew up on a council estate. It's I think you have to hold your own. Try not to let other people's opinions drag you down, but also if it does bother you, this stigma of accent, try not to be the person who also perpetuates it, because we all do. We
Yeah,
can all do it. Oh,
so
you're
true. Yeah.
posh. Well, we need to stop doing that. to say, wow, that's a fantastic accent. I love it. And I know that students get frustrated when someone hears them speak and say, where are you from? I know that people hate that. But in many cases, it comes out of a place of curiosity and a positive place rather than you're not from here, who are you? It's not like a suspicious I'm going to find you out kind of way. It's a genuine interest in who someone is.
No, it's a really deep point that I guess it's been politicized, that whole "where are you from" thing. Whereas I feel like a key point you mentioned earlier is that if you're confident and comfortable with who you are, and those differences, instead of looking at it as like, oh, I wish I could just erase those differences. When
Yeah.
you're actually comfortable, I've found that that question doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
Um, oh, where are you from? I'm British. Oh, but you don't look British. You got to, yeah, I'm also half Asian. Okay. Like
Right.
it's not, no, but I don't take it in a bad way anymore
Yeah.
because I am. And yeah, you don't sound like the other Brits I've met. Yeah, because I've made a conscious effort to speak in a clearer way so you can understand me. Oh,
Yeah.
don't always take it negatively, but it's hard, I guess, for someone who's not
Yeah.
used to that. But I do feel like what you said, the more we love our accents and embrace who we are, the easier it is to be comfortable expressing that to other people as well, which is easier said
Yeah.
than done. A variety of
I-
different contexts.
I've got two young children, and my youngest is 4. And the other day we are at my gym, and we're walking through the corridor, and there's a lady with a large birthmark, like a mark on her
Mhm.
face. And she had a bit of an eye patch on as well, so maybe it was actually something more than a birthmark, but she had something going on with her face, very obvious. As adults, no one would say a word unless you knew them.
Mm.
You say, "Oh my goodness, what's happened?" But as strangers, you don't say a word. My son looked at her, pointed at her face, and said, "What's wrong with her face?" And I was like, "Caspian," and I looked at her in shock, and I was like, I'm so sorry, Caspian. What did you say that for? You can't, don't point, don't look, don't say things like that. And it was, what's going on with her face, Mummy? Her face looks different. I want to know what's going on.
Mm.
And the lady responded in a, "Oh, it's okay. Yeah, and she spoke to him and told him what had happened to her eye. And it was received in the way that it was intended, which was complete innocence. And because she took it that way, she responded in a positive way. It didn't upset her day. It didn't upset my son. I was the only one embarrassed. And I think when we react negatively to people's questions, sometimes it comes from our own insecurities, like it's prodding at our own insecurities. Just like if you have a big spot on your face and you don't like it and you want to hide it, and someone goes, "You've got a spot. What's going on there?" And you go, "Yeah, I've got a spot. Don't look at it." So I would love if people felt the same way about their voices and the way their accents are, um, as that lady felt when my son said, "What's going on with your face?" That you own it and it's okay, and that any questions that come about, you got fantastic accent. Where are you from? That it comes from a place of innocence. If you always take it that way, it will never bother you, and it will never make your day horrible. You know.
Mm. And I think it's something that if you go to London, there's just people, there's communities, not just in London, but where communities from all over the world, history, they migrated to the UK, and then that's developed into a sort of own unique accent that I know
Yeah.
that the British Africans, British Pakistanis, you will often be able
Yeah, the
to on the phone.
Caribbean
Yeah, even
type
if someone's
influences.
been born and raised here, I can normally tell, like, if someone is not always, but within my own community, there are certain ways that British Pakistanis might speak from the north,
Yeah,
and that I would just know without seeing that person. Oh, what's going on, brother? You're right, yeah. You good?
yeah,
Okay, yeah. You're probably, yeah, yeah. There's something there, in that again, you can see that as a bad thing, and oh no, you need to erase that. But that is our history. But that's
exactly.
that's a that's the identity, deep debate. But I think that in the same way that we can appreciate a Welsh accent, a Scottish accent, and all those different things, it's hard. But you're with you. It's an inner conflict, really. Of,
Yeah,
do I want to express where I'm from? I mean, my nan is half Welsh, and they love the Welsh accent because for them that represents their family. But then other accents people might want to hide because of the different, I guess, stigma depending on it. So it's
yeah.
complex.
Yeah. And I feel like a bit of a hypocrite because I'm here, not speaking with my northern accent and saying that I changed my accent. I tried to hide it. I never make a secret of the fact that I'm from the north. And, at the time when I changed the way I spoke, it was purely because of my desperation to not be pigeonholed when I was applying for like jobs, basically like acting jobs, acting work. I wanted to also do voiceover work and maybe be on the radio. And I was always told that, well, with your northern accent, you're likely to be the comedy characters. And I was like, no, I want to be the leading ladies in the Shakespearean productions. And well, you're going to have to do a convincing RP. And I quite enjoyed the challenge of trying to not just switch into RP when I had a role, but actually see if I could take it on in a way where it started to become natural. And it actually bit me in the butt a little bit because I worked for a couple of years to really make this a habitual way of speaking. And then 3 years after I made the decision to change, I got an audition for Coronation Street, which is a popular soap set in Manchester. And I was like, yes, this is brilliant. I could, potentially become a regular character on Corrie. I could live back at home in Manchester with my family. This is brilliant. And then I was like, how do I do my own accent? I kept slipping out. I couldn't. And I was like, but this is my natural accent. I'd never really studied my own accent in the way that I needed to like effectively pull it off. And I felt so self-conscious going into the audition. It was a terrible audition. Needless to say, I didn't get the job.
Wow, but it sounds so strange, but I can genuinely relate to the way, if I listen to clips of me as a kid, I can't believe that's me because it sounds so Cockney, straight out of
Really?
Only Fools and Horses, because that's how my family speak. But then you do evolve and then you do change it. So I don't think it's something bad necessarily, but you can only really tell the difference if you go back or you mix with people who are from that area who didn't change. And
Yeah.
then it becomes apparent that, okay, I've changed. But then I feel like people who really care and respect you are going to understand that. But it does sting some people as well. Like oh, he thinks he's better than us now. Oh, look at him. That is a very British thing of he's different to us now. So he's
Yeah.
different from the tribe. But that's
But I
something
think
you've
I
got to
think when
navigate.
people say stuff like that, that's their issue, not yours.
Mm,
So the people from my childhood, my hometown, who, are unkind about how I speak differently now, that's because they're insecure and they're not happy with the fact that they're stuck where they are, that they haven't progressed, that they're still living in the same place, doing a job that they don't enjoy, and they feel like they've been left behind. So when they're unkind to me about how I speak, I know that it's not me they're really upset with, it's themselves and their own situations. And so I try not to judge them too harshly. I don't let it bother me in the way I used to do. I just kind of brush it off as that's their problem, and they have an opportunity to change their own situation if they want to, or they could just sit there and throw stones at me.
Sticks and stones may break our bones, but yeah, let's not go into into that. But I think that's the complex side of this. But I think on a lighter note now, that
Yes.
people from abroad or just maybe anyone interested in the UK, is that there is something special about going home. That I've lived in many different countries, worked with different types of people, that our humor and the way it's linked with language is something that when I do go back home and I find people using these phrases and that, like, it's a almost venomous sometimes sarcasm that we use to each other, which is, I always say, it's our form of love.
Yeah.
But there is something special. Do you ever
Sometimes.
find that? Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. Well, I say venomous for a reason because it can really hurt as
Yeah.
well. But it is something that is bittersweet, and I do love when I come back home and I always use the word savage because we do at home, we savage each other.
Yeah.
But then it's part of the culture here as well. And sometimes I do miss it when I'm in my very, speaking clearly, professional UN mode. I do miss a little bit of that banter.
Yeah.
And do you ever find that when you go home, there's like, wow, I haven't heard that phrase in a while. There's like something that will just wake your mind up that you're not used to when you're in RP. Maybe you said you're in the South now. How is that for you?
It reminds me of you know how hamsters kind of make a little bed of like cotton wool, and not cotton wool, but they make a little bed and it all looks so cozy, and they go and they get in it and they look so cozy in their little
Uh,
like hole that they've made for themselves. And that's how it feels. Not so much when, because my home, Manchester, has changed so much. I don't recognize it when I go there
wow.
now because everything's been rebuilt. Like it's just unrecognizable. I drive around, I get lost. I'm like, whoa. But when I'm with other people or people from my childhood or people from the same area with the same experiences who know all the same references, then it feels like that little hamster curling up and go, oh, I feel so comfortable. I feel just relaxed and it, we can relate to each other and it is nice. Banter for sure is something that I think people coming to this country or interacting with Brits definitely need to try to understand or be aware of, at least, because it can be cutting. It can be harsh if you don't realize that, or a lot of it could go over someone's head. Like I think sometimes we can be a little unkind and use the nuance of our language to, we say something but mean something completely different. So we might be saying something to someone meaning something different. They don't get the meaning. They take the literal meaning, and everyone else is having a bit of a giggle. And I think it can be, it can be hurtful or, make someone feel distant from a social group or even a workplace group if they can't get involved in the banter or if they don't understand what's going on. And it's not an easy thing to learn either. You learn the language, you learn what words mean, and then you have to learn that actually when we say, that's nice, in certain circumstances, it means that's not very nice. How do you know? Context, tone, the situation, yeah, it's really hard. I think the only way you can really learn to understand banter is to watch a lot of like British culture-based TV. So you have to, it's not just about listening, you have to see how people are interacting with each other. So watch films, movies, soap operas, series, where British people are interacting. And there are many where you can see like the humor, the sarcasm, the understatement. And yeah, it's just about familiarity. And ask questions. Ask questions. Do you mean it? You might have cooked something and you say, what do you think? I've spent so long cooking this. What do you think? What do you think? And they eat and they go, delicious. Really? Do you think so? Are you being genuine? Because I think this might not be very good. Is that, no, that was sarcasm. So I think you have to expose yourself to it, but also ask for clarity if you don't know. Some people banter more than others. I don't know about your friends, but I've got some friends who banter too much, I would say. And sometimes I'm like, come on, guys, this is not the time and the place,
But there is sometimes a coping mechanism as well, right? Of when, let's say, something like really serious like happens. That I don't know in all cultures. Let's say at a funeral, some British people will make a light-hearted joke to cut through the tension, not in a
Yeah.
malicious way, but if you're not used to that, and someone looks at the graveyard and says, "Oh, people are dying to get there," like
Yeah,
you might,
yeah.
oh, how insensitive, whatever. But if you can get a giggle out of someone in this stiff upper lip, stoic, kind of keep calm and carry on culture that we have, you are that can be your kind of survival as well. But it's
Yeah.
so hard to explain it when someone's not used to it and you're just, oh, nice haircut, Hakeem. And I know that they're like basically saying that, oh, who cut your hair? They did a rubbish job. But if you're not used to that, and I find that Americans actually struggle with this even a lot more than, let's say, a French native speaker, because
Yeah.
French people can be very sarcastic. I mean, I'm a French speaker and we're very it's normal to be very vulgar and sarcastic in French. But then a native English speaker from America might be used to taking it a lot more literally, depending on where they're
Yeah.
from. And I've got family from America who kind of sit and watch British TV shows with us, and they just don't get it. And it's quite frustrating for them. Like, the rest of the room's all laughing, and they can't understand, as you said, the references, or even just our way of saying things in an ironic or sarcastic way.
Yeah.
That is our mother tongue. That is so normal for people. But
I think it
yeah,
stems from, sorry,
no,
cut
go,
you
please,
off.
please, please, go on, go, go.
I think it stems from generally as a culture, we don't like to show or express big emotions. Obviously, it's changing as time goes on, but over the generations, it's always been you conceal your emotions, you keep your emotions to yourself, and we just get on with things. So whether that's being like really excited about something, or like, desperately in love, or fearful, or, grieving, we've always been a culture of keep it concealed and don't show other people. We just get on business as usual and carry on with our day, and we don't let other people see how we're feeling, and we certainly don't talk about our problems. And so humor is a way of putting a lid on it again. So when something is, I've certainly had it where I can't remember the exact examples, but I've had times where I've been either in the hospital in an emergency situation, or in tears, having received some horrible news, and then making a joke, and then people around me laughing, and then making a joke and me laughing, going, oh, it's too painful, because we're spilling over. We're allowing our guard to come down, and we're experiencing something big, and people can see. So we make a joke to say, it's okay. I'm trying to get a lid on this emotion, hide it again. So we'll just use this barrier called humor to try and, make everybody else feel comfortable with the fact that we're having an emotional time. And yeah, I think many people find it a relief in those situations as well. Humor does kind of cut through that tension, or bring them back if they're too excitable,
It's definitely a double-edged sword, because there are parts where I'm so grateful for it, and it can be really enjoyable as well when you're all on the same page and you are genuinely all enjoying it. But I know that growing up at a boys' grammar school, we crossed the line all the time. There was no line, which, looking back, was probably the reason why a lot of us all had a kind of insecurities and whatever.
right.
And my maturity that I hope is that when I look back now with those same groups of friends, when we were 18, you would go as deep. What's the most insecure part of my friend I can find? The part of his life that he just is so sensitive about. I'm gonna just completely exploit those, no limits, but he's gonna do the same to me as well.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah,
as I got a little bit older, I said, okay, if we're both not laughing, is it really banter?
yeah,
And that's when I've kind of a bit more sensitive, and I say a bit, and I want to talk about euphemisms a bit later as well here. But I've realized that it's not always healthy. That said, though, that part of the thick skin of being on YouTube now and seeing like negative comments from people taking the mick out of how I look or how I sound or whatever, I feel like I am a bit better at dealing with those because of that environment
yeah.
of the British culture, where if you watch any sitcom, I mean, it's, you got to watch with caution. It's not for the younger audiences, but there's one called The In-Betweeners. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is the perfect representation, the most accurate representation of the humor at my school when I was at school.
Okay.
And I can still watch that now at 31 years old and laugh a lot, because it does remind me of how we used to be. But then it is also probably the reason why a lot of people grow up very insecure and very, uncomfortable with who they are, because it's like a war zone, a
Yeah.
verbal war zone between you and your friends. And I know some people say that sarcasm is a great sign of intelligence and all of this as well. So I'm not
It's
sure,
like the lowest form of wit, I think.
that's what some people have said. I saw a BBC article of it's actually a sign of intelligence. Maybe we're compensating
Okay.
and trying to convince ourselves otherwise. But yeah, what do you think?
What you're saying there about how banter and sarcasm growing up actually caused you to have a lot of insecurities. I relate to that completely because I I was a very nervous and insecure person, even though I wanted to pursue, a life where I speak to many people, whether that's on the stage or online. I felt really, really nervous and scared because I grew up in an environment. I had lots of brothers, and I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of banter. There was a lot of unkind comments flying around that were meant in jest or, with love, but actually were quite unkind. And that really did affect me. And I've been online now for 10 years as a YouTuber. And the initial hate that I received had a big impact. I would spend nights wide awake, not being able to sleep. I would make differences to the way I dress or the way I present myself because of what one person who I didn't know had said on a video. And it really had an impact. And over time, as an adult, I've become more calm, more at peace with who I am, that I don't need the outside world to tell me that I have self-worth because I've got it here. And that helps me to protect myself and have a thick skin. But as children, as young people, or being naive, that banter and sarcasm can be more detrimental than people realize,
Yeah.
perhaps. So there has to be a balance. And I think that's an important lesson in communication, not just through language, that you use humor. If you're coming to the UK, definitely use humor, understand sarcasm, understatement, all those things, but use it in balance with sincerity and clarity. Like, don't just use humor all the time. I had a friend who came to dinner with me and an ex once, and my ex was constant banter, like never stopped being. Everything was a joke, everything was sarcasm, banter, winding you up. I'm just kidding. And my friend at the end of the dinner said she was supposed to stay over with us, and she said, "I'm going to go home." I said, "Why? What's wrong? Didn't we all have fun? We were all laughing." She went, "Yeah, but it's exhausting. I'm exhausted with the constant jokes, the constant banter. Like, there's never not serious, like boring, but there's never a genuine word or comment passed between us. And it's just exhausting. I can't be in the room with him for another second. I don't know how I don't know how you've chosen this person as your boyfriend." So it has to be all in balance with some genuine conversation as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me, is because I've been away from it for so long. I would have said a lot of the same things. I know how dangerous and toxic it often is, but I don't know how to get that right balance. But for someone who is coming from abroad and interested in the culture, you have to familiarize yourself with it if you want to survive and understand what's going on around you. And I think that comedies are a great way to
Yeah.
understand this, because, or just observing people as well. But it's really tough, because then there's, how can I say, there's ways that, like, it can really help you connect to people if you do have an awareness of it. But there's always, what I say now is that there's two types of this. There's people who genuinely are trying to connect with you and banter with you. And I often say, if someone's teasing you in a light-hearted way in the UK, that's actually often a sign that they might feel really comfortable with you and they
Yeah.
like you. But then there are just a lot of mean people. So, and I don't know where the line for that is, and it's really difficult to distinguish sometimes. But in a lot of hierarchical cultures where you're older than me in the workplace, I have to, give you all this deference. With Brits, having a bit of light-hearted banter and teasing can actually get you closer, and you streamline that process into the seniors. Oh, he's witty. Oh, she's a
Yeah.
good laugh. So
Yeah.
you're going to streamline that. So there's a really good side of it. And if someone does poke fun, they might actually really like you and feel really
Yeah.
comfortable.
It's
But
so
then there
funny. We say
are,
to boys, "Oh, this
yeah,
girl's really mean to me." "Oh, does she like you?" That's usually the
oh,
first thought. "This girl's bullying me. This girl's been horrible to me." "Oh, do you think she fancies you?"
Well, what my nan always used to say, you got to be mean to keep them keen, or something like that.
Yes. Treat
So
them mean, keep them keen.
that's the one. That's the
Yeah.
one, right? So yeah, it's just really difficult. I don't want to swear, but there are a lot of, if the people who cross the line too much, there are a lot of beeps out there who just genuinely, I found in the UK as well, you can do everything. You can look good, you can speak well, you can everything. They're still just gonna, in an unkind way, just rip into you.
Yeah.
And for those people, if you're from abroad and you're mixing with those, I'd say don't waste too much time on those. But if someone is playfully showing that interest and giving you a little bit of banter, I find that they actually more often than not probably do feel comfortable with you. But
Yeah.
I'm struggling to explain it now because it's not easy. It's
No.
not easy to explain this.
Yeah. You have to kind of go with your gut feeling a little bit and give a little back. If someone is teasing you, then tease them back and see if that, gets a laugh. See if they're laughing with you. And I think as general life advice is anyone who doesn't make you feel good about yourself, cut them. Don't waste your energy on people that drain you. Fill your cup with positivity.
Is it half full or half empty? Let's see.
I think that's definitely quite full, actually.
Thank you. Well, okay. Another thing that we've mentioned or touched on there is that Brits, a few times you've said, oh, a little bit, right? So we spoke about literal English, but then in England, and I know some other cultures do this, but a lot are just very literal and very direct. If I said to someone, oh, how's the food? Needs just a little bit more spice for my palate, right? A lot of people will take that very literally. So this, I don't know, what do you call them, euphemisms, or in language that is more, there's a word when it's not as direct, you soften it. Could you explain that phenomenon? Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's a bit cold means I'm freezing, or
So
I'm
that's
feeling a bit
understatement.
peckish. Understatement, that's the one. So I'm a bit peckish means I'm so hungry now. Like,
Yeah.
give me some food. Or me asking you, are you hungry? Means I don't care about if you're actually hungry. I just really want to eat. So that's something that I find some people aren't used to. The indirectness of Brits. Could you
Yeah.
speak a bit about that?
Well, so it reminds me of the whole, is it the Holy Grail where they're having a fight and he chops off his arm and his arms like some blood is just squirting out of his stump and he goes, it's just a scratch. It's just a scratch. Nothing to worry about. And I think you need to see a doctor. No, it's just a scratch. Yeah, I think that kind of understatement is just it's a way of either being humorous and trying to get a laugh, which is more often the case these days, or it's a way to deflect because you don't want the attention or you don't want whatever's going on to derail a conversation or the focus of a chat. But then also it could be to protect people's feelings. We are. It's hard to say that we are a polite culture, that we are very polite people, because I know a lot of people who are not polite, and I get frustrated with how impolite many Brits are, particularly when they're in their cars. But there is this, set standard of, say you please and say thank you. And if someone bumps into you, you say sorry. Have you ever had that?
Sorry.
Sorry, you've just hit me. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous how polite we are. And understatement sometimes is that idea of not wanting to offend someone. So if you're at somebody's house and you've had dinner and the dinner was a small portion compared to what you would like, and they say, maybe your stomach rumbles after the meal, and they say, "Oh, are you still hungry?" A little. I could eat a little more. I'm a little bit peckish. If there is any more, it was a delicious meal. It was fine. We don't want to, offend them by saying, "Yeah, I'm starving." What was that? That was a starter. That wasn't a main. How could you serve that and say that's a portion? We wouldn't want to say that because it's too direct. Everything in British culture is indirect. We soften everything. It's just how we've always been. It's how we function in the professional world as well as in like casual social settings. Everything is softened. And if someone is direct, then it gets everybody's heckles up. It can really put people on edge. Sometimes that's a benefit. So, from a psychology point of view, when somebody is too nice, they tend not to achieve because they are too soft. But if someone's quite hard and direct and blunt, they tend to achieve because people know where they stand and they ask for what they want and they don't soften it. So, maybe you don't want to be too soft and too indirect, but if you are working in an international company or interacting with people from the UK, being direct can come across as rude. So you do have to be softer and more careful with how you put things. Asking someone, you might be the boss and you might, have the authority to say, finish this report by the end of the day and get it on my desk. Finish the report, get it on my desk. Now that's too direct. So even though you're the boss and you've got the authority, the expectation is that you'd say, could you possibly finish the report by the end of the day? That would be fantastic. And it would be wonderful if you could put it on my desk before you leave. Thank you so much. It seems ridiculous, all these extra words, this kind of way of saying, could you? Because you're not actually giving them the option to say, no, I couldn't. If they said that, you'd be like, why not? I'm the boss. But we put it that way just to say, I'm being polite, I'm being respectful. I would like you to finish this and I'd like you to put it on my desk. No questions asked, get it done. But I'm saying it in a nice way to keep the relationship palatable. It's,
I mean, this is,
yeah, it's just, I like it because I don't always know where I stand with people. And maybe that's because I'm British. If somebody is blunt and direct with me, I think they don't like me. I'm like, oh, they said they were very harsh in the way they spoke to me. So I'm assuming they don't like me. And then later down the line, I find out they do like me. And I say, it's funny, when we first met, I thought you didn't like me very much because you were so direct. But this is also where the kind of clash can come when you're with people from different cultures, because we might think that somebody else is rude because they're not British and what they say is very to the point. You're like, well, that's rude. You should say could and would, and it would be so kind if you would do this for me. It's just something to be aware of. Our silly expectations of indirectness.
That's very, very well said. And you're making me think a lot, because even the boss, right, would say, like you said, could you please do this? It would be extremely helpful if you could do this. And then often what we'd do, and I think you did it once there when in the example, is then we will like backtrack and say, oh no, but only if you've got a moment. Like, no, of course you don't have to do it. I'm not insisting, but we'll kind of like backtrack against what we said, even though we still just really want you to do it. Is it possible for you to come to lunch tomorrow for an important meeting? But no, I understand if not. We kind of blabber afterwards. But that is just the law of the land here. So rather than saying what's right or wrong, I think it is really important that people are aware of that, because if you're not, and I've worked with Germans and Americans, and it took me a long time to understand that should be corrected. That's wrong. When I would first get a bit of feedback that was so direct, I wanted to cry. They like my reaction wasn't my work's not good. It's they hate me.
Yeah.
But then you're making me be really self-critical, because I'm of course I'm British and half my family are English, but I've also got a very mixed family. So I'm used to the directness from them. And then I would obviously mimic that with fully like Brits who've never been raised with other cultures, and then realize, okay, you're making me realize now why so many people I guess I clashed with, because compared to the average typical Brit, let's say, I can be direct, which in other cultures has helped me really connect with people. But then you've got the extremes of this kind of directness, and each culture's got its like sweet spot that's polite and comfortable. And it's tough in the UK because some Brits can be very harsh as well. but then the overarching culture is still this,
Yeah.
you don't have to, which
Don't look
with a
them in the
hamster,
eye.
but that's the hamster in us. Like we're curled up in that moment, right? So it's, yeah,
And I
very,
think
very
small
profound.
talk is probably one of the best tools that you can have in your toolbox. If you're not from the UK and you come here or you're interacting with Brits, small talk is your first line of defense. If
Oh,
you open
amazing.
every conversation or interaction with somebody with small talk, then it sets up what comes next. Like everyone expects a little bit of small talk. And so I have a remote team. I work in my home, and all of my team work. Most of them are actually in different countries. And we check in through WhatsApp in the mornings. And I will often because I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed with life and work. I will often go straight into morning. Could you do this? And I need that, and that needs to be done. And then I go, and I go onto the voice note and say, I'm so sorry. I should have started with, how are you? How was your day yesterday? Did it go well? And how's the family? And then they say, don't worry. We know you're busy. And because we're doing it, remotely, sometimes I forget myself, but then I always catch and go, oh my goodness, I didn't start with small talk. It's just a kind of baseline expectation that you can't just, even the salespeople, and it actually frustrates me when you get a cold call. I don't know if you've ever had it. Hi, is that Anna? Yes, who's speaking, please? How's your day, Anna? Nice to talk to you. Is your day going well? I do not want to take your call right now. So stop the small talk and tell me exactly why you're calling so I can decide whether to hang up or not. But it is an expectation. Every interaction, even a really serious business meeting, you go in, good morning, how is everyone? Good? Yeah, did you go to that staff do the other? Oh, yeah, was it good? Was it? Yeah, great. Okay. Should we get down to business? So it's just laying the land, I think.
Yeah, it was something that when it was so hard to shed that off as a Brit when in an international working environment where I'd been told always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Like like, greet everyone, be very cordial and, comment about the weather, it's a lovely day we got today, and just everything be as indirect as possible before getting down to business, and then realizing in an international setting, and it did rub off on me eventually that people would just go straight to the point.
Really?
No beating around the bush. Hi, today we're going to discuss this. And I used to criticize it so much because I found it at the start, I found it awful that they're not asking me how I am. How awful, how disrespectful. And then realizing now when running this channel, which is a lot of work and a lot of pressure, that as you said, you probably got 10 different things going on. You just want to know, has that email been sent, or
Yeah.
did that person reply? Are we doing a podcast tomorrow? You're not asking, good morning, how are you? How's the family? How's mom? You just got to go to it. And maybe I've just become a bit more German than I thought I ever would, which I never thought I'd be saying that. So it's just tough when you've got a lot of things on your plate. And they do say that the biggest lie ever told that people tell is, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. Because imagine you're in that important conference call or meeting and someone says, how are you? And actually, my hamster just passed away and I've been really
Yeah.
upset. And then, no, we need to discuss, the investments going in or whatever. And it's like, no, but my hamster, it's tough.
Yeah.
You're
It's
not
that.
actually expected to go into it, are you?
Exactly. It's a very odd thing. I think we just like fluff. We like fluff. We don't like straight lines. We like everything to be a little bit fluffy. And when someone says to you, hey, how you doing? Unless it's like your mum or your best mate, the expectation is that you just reply with, yeah, good, thanks. Great, good. And if you've got something really exciting or positive to share, then you say, yeah, great. Just picked up my new car. Or, yeah, great. I just got my exam results. I passed. Oh, yeah, great. But if you have anything negative or you're having a bad time, you never divulge. You don't go, oh, I'm having a terrible time. Actually, my leg's really hurting and I've got some bad results from the doctor. We don't do that. It's kind of bad form because people don't actually want to know how you are. It's very odd, but we like to
It,
fluff it up by saying, how are you? Yeah,
pretend.
good.
The thing is, the Brit in me, as soon as you said those three examples of I got the new car, I know this first thing that came to my head as if I'm being critical, Brit would be a bit of a show off. You know, like, oh,
Well, yeah.
nice for some. Or I just passed my exams. So, do you want a medal? Or, oh, my hamster just died, or overshare much. There's always
Yeah.
something like there's a little there's it's like tennis. There's always someone's ready to have that comment back.
Yeah.
Um, but I do found this deviating slightly is that as a kid, I remember finding it really difficult to understand how to reply to, right, you're right. Like because in my hometown, people would often say, I, you're right, but not expect a response.
Hmm.
And then it comes down to that. It's more often just like a hi. Like when we say, how
Yeah.
are you? It's not necessarily a literal question. And this comes down to being in, I don't know if they say in the North actually, whether people actually say this or not, but people are like, right, mate. And then you could reply with, right, mate. And that gets shortened to, that's your
Yeah.
conversation. But I remember as a kid, someone saying, and me saying, yes, I am. How are you? And then looking very strange. So I feel like it is a bit more of just a greeting rather than an actual
Absolutely.
deep question. But
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite funny. You're walking down the street. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's like you're just saying hello,
yeah.
hello, hello, hello.
Because even the another member of Evolve is Clemente, and he's half French, half Spanish, and he came to the UK to study English, and he said that was really confusing for him as well. That when people say, because he came down to Kent for the first time and heard, "You right, mate? Yes, I'm fine. How are you?" And people sometimes they don't expect that response, even though technically they're asking, "Are
Yeah,
you all right?" It doesn't.
yeah.
It doesn't actually translate to that. It's a strange one. Mm. Okay. Any other particular peculiarities or essential parts of the culture that you think we haven't touched on yet?
So I think it's always important to understand how important tea is in this country. I think food and drink is one area where we can really start to connect with
Mm,
people. And tea or coffee. Coffee's becoming more popular now. I think most people enjoy heading to a coffee shop. There are coffee shops everywhere, especially down in the
everywhere.
south. There's so many popping up on the high streets. Um, so, understanding how to take tea, how to tell someone how you take your tea, and just learning to enjoy tea is a good step in the right direction if you're interacting with Brits, because if you go to anyone's house, probably the first thing they're going to ask you is, would you like a cup of tea? How'd you take your tea? So knowing how to respond to that, and because I think how we take the tea in the UK is quite different
Mm,
to other countries. How we generally have English breakfast tea. We take out the tea bag and we have it with milk, uh, and that's our standard. Some people will have sugar. Do you have sugar in your tea?
not anymore. I
Oh, good,
try to be
good,
healthy. So
good, good, good. Um, yeah, but then just enjoying tea with a Brit, and enjoying a biscuit, or or going for a Sunday roast and enjoying some of these very, very British cuisines, British cultures. I think always just embracing it as well. You know, the best way to feel like you're a part of something is to get involved and do the thing that people of that culture do. But I don't think I even need to say that to your listeners. They probably are, um, seasoned travelers, and getting involved in different customs and cultures is a part of being a seasoned traveler.
no, it's true. The do you want a cuppa? Should I stick the kettle on? But I'll put the kettle on. It's a huge part of our culture, actually, when you think about it. And I've insulted even my own family members by sometimes taking the tea bag out first or leaving the tea bag in. I think I left the tea bag in and then put the
Oh
milk in,
gosh.
and apparently that's illegal in the UK, and I got
No, I do
confused.
that.
And
I do that. It
so
cools
yeah,
the tea bag down slightly before you take it out. I always squeeze it. I do a finger squeeze of the tea bag. And so, well, at least on my cup of tea. If you came to visit, I'd probably use a spoon or a strainer.
yeah, well, you can do
Um,
the clamp, right, with the two spoons to kind of
oh, yeah,
rinse
yeah.
the yeah. So
Two
what,
spoons.
for the record though, what is the proper way to make tea?
Well, there are different arguments for the technique, but the way I think you make tea is that you, if you're doing it with a tea bag, if you're not using loose leaf, you put the tea bag in the cup and then you put the hot water onto the tea bag directly without milk, because the tea leaves need to be as hot as possible to release the flavour. If you put milk in with the tea bag and then put water on top, the milk has already wet and cooled the tea leaves, and the water isn't going to be as hot, so you won't get such a strong flavour. So you put the hot water in and then you leave it for about 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay.
So you get a good colour, and then you squeeze it, and then you put your milk in, and then you squeeze the tea bag, take it out, squeeze it again. So there's no
second
drips.
squeeze. Okay.
Second
Okay.
squeeze. Maybe that's the secret. The second squeeze is the secret to a delicious tea. And then you give it a stir, and you're good to go.
You heard it here first. If you're not squeezing it twice, you're not getting the optimal taste.
Yeah.
And then another thing I hear the most when I'm abroad, and I don't know, I always get this. All you eat is fish and chips. The only British cuisine is fish and chips. What would you respond to that? What is British cuisine?
Oh, so I think it is difficult to talk about British cuisine because, as you know, the same with accents and how our language developed, we are a mix of so many different influences. And our cuisines are no different. They are influenced by all the different people who've come into the country and introduced new things. If I think about what you get here as a kind of standard British food, you've got things like the Sunday roast, things like toad in the hole, which is the sausages in a kind of pastry, not a pastry, like a, what is it? Like a Yorkshire pudding, a giant Yorkshire pudding with sausages and gravy. Sausage and mash, or bangers and mash, as you might call it, with onion gravy and peas. Delicious. I don't really eat sausages anymore, but I used to really enjoy that. I certainly like the gravy with the, I'm northern, I love gravy.
Bisto.
I used to always think, all my meals, I realised I like them to be quite wet with like a sauce, because I'm northern, so everything came with gravy or some sort of sauce. And then I came to the south and everything felt quite dry, and I was like, where's the gravy? Meat and potato pies is another thing. I loved meat and potato pies in the north, and I came to the south. They don't have them. Nobody sells meat and potato pies or meat and potato pasties.
It's a steak and kidney pie that we have a lot down here.
But meat and potato, oh, I was so upset. It's like, you guys are missing out. That's like a standard in the north. What else is so I would say curry is like a chicken tikka masala, because the way we do curry is kind of insulting to like Indians. I remember I worked on a cruise ship for 2 years, and a lot of the crew were Indian, and they had their own kind of they had a different canteen to ours. We were in the officers' canteen, so we had kind of the very bland food, and they, after hours, after work, they would do these real Indian curries. And we would sometimes sneak down and say, can we come and eat in your canteen, please? Because we don't like the boring, like, chicken nuggets and things in our canteen. Can we come to yours for a nice curry? The curry was so different. It was so flavorful. It wasn't kind of the thick, saucy kind of curries that we have here. It was completely different. I was like, wow. So we did it all the time. And when I came back to England, had a curry here, I was like, it's not the same. This isn't curry. This is a completely different thing altogether. But I would potentially say that chicken tikka masala is a British dish, one of the British dishes, influenced, of course, by India. What else? Fish and chips is a standard. I don't really like fish and chips these days. I don't enjoy it. It's too greasy. It's not much flavour.
I mean, the only time I've had it this year was when my friend from Asia, my Thai friend, came to visit, and that's what he wanted to eat, you know?
Right.
So
It's just greasy and stodgy. Like these days, I like really healthy food, so it's a kind of goes against my general diet. Steak and chips, or like egg and chips. Have you ever had like a dippy egg and soldiers?
that was literally my bread and butter as a kid. It was come home from school to Nan's house, egg and chips.
Egg and chips.
That was the staple that has kept my family. That's the reason my family's alive, basically, is because of
Hey,
egg
it's
and
good
chips.
for the brain. I try and get an egg in my kids every day. It's good for brain development, apparently.
We're here now, so
yeah,
that's all I can say.
There was a study, I can't remember who did the study, but the study showed that children who had an egg a day had a higher IQ, something like 15% higher IQ than children who didn't have an egg a day growing up.
So there is definitely a method to the madness here then.
Yeah, eat eggs as much as you can.
You mentioned something. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, it's funny because we have developed, you mentioned curries, and a really interesting one, because the whole kind of going for an Indian and curry and a pint has become a very routine thing for a lot of people across the country, regardless of background. But one thing Brits might not know is that in Japan, there's a dish they call curry rice, kare rice, which is their version of our version of Indian curry. So it was, I can't remember the exact history, but Japanese mixed with Brits at one time. I can't remember what time during history. They like the way that we made curry, which is our version of the Indian curry. So if you go to Japan, you'll be surprised. You'll find a lot of HP sauce used in their dishes. And my English dad in Japan was shocked because, we're used to kind of the South Asian spices. In Japan, there's like, brown sauce everywhere in a lot of their dishes. So, how do you even describe brown sauce? Is that something in the North as well that you have?
Yeah, do you want red sauce or like, ketchup or brown sauce? Daddy's sauce, they called it, didn't they? Daddy's sauce. That must have been a marketing campaign that stuck. Obviously, they did a good job. I've never enjoyed brown sauce, and I don't really know what it is they use to make brown sauce. I don't understand what the ingredients must be. I don't really have sauces in my house. I'm very strict with diet, so I occasionally let the children have ketchup, but we don't really have any sauces, just because they're mostly sugar and chemicals. I could talk a lot about food. But yeah, brown sauce is a funny one. It's kind of like tangy. I haven't tasted it in a long time, so I wouldn't really know how else to describe it. Like a tomato sauce, but not so sweet, more tangy than tomato.
No, but you mentioned the food thing's tough, right? Because it is such a big part of the identity as well. That when you try and like now I'm going through that process on both sides, on the English and the Asian side, of a lot of what I was eating when I was young wasn't good for me. And when you tell someone that, it's tough. But maybe that's another conversation for another day. But we are kind of notorious across the world for this. I've got it so many times where, I love your accent, and you don't have a cuisine, and it hurts.
Oh, really?
But then, that's the banter that I get the most of the UK. They want to hear me say water. That's the first thing.
Bottle of water.
This is it. They want to hear bottle of water, and then they want to laugh at the fish and chips. But the thing is, that's their banter. I can definitely take it. But
we've got other things though. We've got Welsh rarebit. We've got scones, hot cross buns.
That's where I think we are top tier when it comes to the afternoon teas and those sort of things. But if I'm honest, I don't. I don't regularly go for afternoon tea. I don't know. Is that a thing that you do? Is that?
It's a trick. Well, I don't really eat white bread. I don't at all. I don't know why I used really. I don't eat white bread, and I rarely eat cakes, and I very heavily limit how often I'll eat pastry. I limit sugar
Hmm.
generally. So going for afternoon tea is like a real deviation
Mm.
from my kind of healthy lifestyle. So it might be like a once a year thing that I would do. But scones, like you'll find scones sold in most kind of like, I go to National Trust a lot. I like being outdoors. And so they'll always offer scones, hot cross buns, and tea cakes, toasted tea cakes with a cup of tea. Oh, I mean, they're naughty. These things are naughty, but we do enjoy them.
That's it. So there, for anyone who's doubting what we've got in the UK, we are up there when it comes to the sweet treats, in moderation, of course. But
Yes.
yeah, Anna, we've covered a lot. Are there any other things that you'd like to mention, or for anyone who just really is trying so hard to learn about England, might feel a little bit lost? What any kind of final message for them?
If you if you're wanting to improve your English and feel more comfortable when communicating with Brits, you need to greatly increase your input, and also don't avoid the opportunities to practice, to throw yourself into the deep end and have those interactions. So the more, if you imagine how a child learns, I know our brains kind of change as we get older. And when you're younger, you're in this very open learning phase. But a child will listen and listen and listen and take all the input for years, for 2 years before they even begin to produce sound and start speak or produce words and sentences. Um, as an adult learner, we have such a busy life that trying to find time to input a new language, it might be an hour a day, maybe even less than that, that we're listening to English or doing some English study. So if you genuinely want to improve your English, you need to twofold, fourfold increase your input. You need to listen more. Your brain needs to get used to the sounds, and just it might sound like complete gobbledygook initially. You might be like, I don't understand anything, but you still need to be hearing, 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 and watching, and then throwing yourself in at the deep end and interacting. The more you can increase your input and take yourself out of your comfort zone and interact, the faster you will start to feel comfortable. It's like ripping off that plaster. It will be nerve-wracking and uncomfortable, and you might feel like you don't understand a thing. But the more you do it, like no one ever throws themselves into an English-speaking environment for a long period of time and doesn't end up understanding. No child who's able-bodied doesn't ever learn how to walk. Like if you just keep doing, your brain is so amazing. You just have to give it credit. It can recognize patterns. It can start to pick out words. It can start to connect that smile with that phrase. So that means that's a positive phrase and it happens here. And your brain can do so much, but you have to give it the material, the data to work with. So it doesn't always have to be active study. I need to translate every word. Just wash your brain daily with English. And over time, your brain will do so much of the work for you. So trust yourself and enjoy increasing your input as much as possible.
Excellent. Great words to finish on. And of course, one of the best ways to do this is to subscribe and follow Anna's channel, English Like a Native, where she breaks down not only the language side of things, but the culture, accents. Got it all on there. So that will be up on the screen now and in the description box below. But of course, huge gratitude to Anna for breaking this down. I think this is definitely the most British episode we've had on Evolve so far, which is nice to share that with everyone. So please let us know what you think about the UK. Are you learning British English? We want to know everything down in the comments below. Please like the video. Consider subscribing as well, as it helps us to have more conversations like this. But until next time, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.